Hey y'all, this is Brianna Boyd. I am the host of Lesser Known Self, and we are back for season 2. I'm very excited to be here. It's obviously been quite a minute since I posted an episode, so this first episode in particular is going to be rife with updates. And at the end, I will bring you a interview that I'm very excited about with an artist who has a really profound perspective on mental health and intersectionality, and so we'll get into that at the end. To start, Lesser Known Self, what is it? Lesser Known Self is a podcast that I started around 2019 at the start of the pandemic. I'd long had an interest in mental health at the time. Like I said, I worked in the music industry, and especially at that time, I was very focused on making a name for myself in the music industry, and I found it hard to publicly marry all of my interests and values on social media in particular. Specifically, I found it hard to be honest about my struggles with mental health, my interests in mental health while I worked in the music industry. It's not that someone told me, hey, there's going to be a consequence, or hey, you're going to be perceived this way. It's kind of just this amalgamation of messages I received from my caregivers around how to operate in the world, especially as a young Black girl. And I didn't feel that I'd be perceived as someone who was capable, or I felt that there might be some sort of bad perception on me in terms of being open about my mental health. And frankly, I didn't feel like someone like myself could be all of those different things. So yeah, it was a very bold move for me to do the podcast. And that first season, I talked about things like my father's suicide. I had an interview with my mom where we talk about some of my struggles with mental health up to that point, which is something that I've struggled with throughout my life, even into my early childhood. And so I'm really proud of that body of work, and I genuinely thank all the guests on that first season. I think the conversations are important. I like doing it, if nothing else, and I feel like especially in today's political climate and just the world that we're living in, if you love making art, if you have any sort of creative endeavor that you'd like to do, it's important that you do it, no matter how many people receive it, how many people buy it. I really do feel that, and it has been said by, leaders in the past, that that's also an act of resistance. Perception, identity, loneliness, otherness, mental health struggles are something that there's kind of a through line in my life with that interest. It's been interesting to come back to the podcast because I feel uniquely equipped to hold space in that way, and you'll see in some of the episodes that it's palpable. It does feel like a safe space, and I feel very honored to be able to do that, and so I thank you for being here. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's happened in my life in the last couple of years. I put the show on hiatus in 2021, and in those last couple of years I have experienced a couple different life transitions that have been hard for me to navigate. I don't feel the same that I did a couple years ago, and that's also okay, because I shouldn't feel the same as I did a couple years ago, but still, it has been a hard road at points, for sure. Towards the end of season 1, I moved out to California. That's something that I wanted to do for quite some time. I lived in New York. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I lived here till I was about 26, 27 years old before I moved away. Prior to that, I'd long wanted to go to California. I used to have this lithograph on my ceiling with palm trees, and I wanted to go to college in California. And at the time, I didn't end up going to California because I was struggling with my mental health even as a teen and as a child. And our parents make decisions, and sometimes they're doing the best they can, and sometimes sometimes the best might not be the wisest choice possible. But I didn't end up doing that because I didn't have the support of my mom, who felt that I wouldn't be able to handle that experience on my own from a mental health perspective. I think my mom had a lot of fears around my mental health, and frankly, this is a good spot to put in a trigger warning, because in the interview later, we are going to be discussing suicidality, and I am also about to talk a little bit of suicidality. Before I enter into that, to each their own. My perspective is people die by mental health issues. They die by substance issues. That's something that happens, and unfortunately, it's something that's going to continue to happen. I think that the more that we box up suicide into a box and throw it away, and it's like Voldemort, I think that the more that we do that, the more it harms people who are struggling. People have suicidal ideations, and even if they don't succumb to it, I don't want to say most people, because frankly I don't know the statistics on that, but I feel like what I've experienced is the average human at some point might ideate on suicide at some point in their lives. So I'd rather us just have that conversation, and I'd rather someone who might be struggling with that hear us just talk about that plainly, and that might mean something to them. I've struggled with suicidality in my life. I lost my father to suicide. I also lost my paternal uncle to suicide, so that's something that's very serious to me. My mom wanted to protect me, and my mom was doing the best that she could. So long story short, it took me quite some time to move out to California, but I did. I met a man that was a very fast and heavy courtship. I was desperado. I had no self-worth. I was extremely depressed, and I'd been dating a lot of emotionally unavailable men in New York City and crying in the back of Ubers for a while. So I met some guy who was like, "I'll take ya," and that was a whole thing. So I got legally married and divorced. The aftermath of that and that situation is something that did how I viewed people and how I trust people. I also experienced a job loss situation that I'm really not at liberty to speak about legally, but at the same time, it's something that definitely affected my life greatly. It affected my life way more than that relationship and that divorce or anything else that happened during that period of time. That shifted me over to pursuing my interests in mental health. I became a peer support specialist. I started another initiative that's focused on otherness and intersectionality to a degree. I started something called Insula Collective, where I began facilitating support groups for BIPOC individuals in Los Angeles and online, and I loved it. I felt like I was good at it. It felt deeply rewarding, also exhausting. That kind of put me in a place to consider becoming a therapist. I didn't really initially want to become a therapist. That's why I wanted to become a peer support specialist, because my experience with therapy is a bit complicated, and we might talk a little bit about it further in future episodes, but I've been seeing therapists off and on since I was probably about 5 years old. I began seeing a therapist consistently and weekly from the time I was 17. I'm about to be 33 now, so I've seen my fair share of therapists. I've seen therapists on a Medicaid level. I've seen therapists at we're paying $400 a session. My perspective on therapy is a little bit different than some other people's, and it continues to be something that's interesting as I study to become a mental health counselor myself. I am deeply passionate about mental health support, and I think you can see that in season 1 of the show, and season 2 is a continuation of that. Part of the reason why I stopped is because I felt like nobody was listening, and I was at a different point in my life. I'm at a point now where I have 4 episodes recorded, 4 interviews recorded. I love these interviews. I hope that I can bring you more episodes. I am struggling with my mental health. I do struggle with focus. I do struggle with getting things done. Is it because my depression is very bad right now? Is it because I have ADHD? I'm not quite sure. So this is also a practice in it's worth doing. I love these conversations. It fills my cup. I feel like I'm good at it. And so it doesn't really matter how many people listen to it. A couple quick disclaimers. This is a very DIY effort. I'm recording in my room. I live by the J train in Brooklyn. The J train is going to pass. There might be a honk. There might be some different noises. I bought a little mic on Amazon. I have headphones, and this is what you gonna get about this bonnet. But, I invite the challenge of relaxing my own anxieties as well. So with that, I'd love to introduce the interview for today's episode. I'm very excited to be talking to a guest called Les Sirén. I also talked a little bit about their artist name, the history of that, and a bit about who they are. I feel very happy about where this person is. They had a tour in November, and I did attend the show. It was amazing. The band was amazing. They're called Commitment. Something that really stuck out to me about this episode in particular is just how bold this person is. It felt so refreshing to hear them describe themselves as an angry person. The way they talked about mental health struggles as a child was so direct and so refreshing, and I felt like I learned quite a bit from this conversation. I'm very honored to say that this is their first interview they mentioned to me after. So thank you so much to La Sirén, aka Tatiana, for being on the show. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lesser Known Self. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Tatiana, and her artist name is La Sirén. She's a creative, she's a photographer, she's a musician, and really speaks a lot about intersectionality in her work. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you. So I'm going to start each episode off with the same question I'm going to ask
hmm
everyone. So I'd love to know, when no one else is watching and all the labels are stripped away, who is your lesser known self?
Ooh, that's a great question. Hmm. My lesser known self, I think, is really quite shy, and very introspective. I think out in the world through music and creativity and just like friend groups and work, I think I'm perceived as a really outgoing person, but I think it's really a matter of not doing some kind of performance for the public. I am really very quiet person. I would dare say borderline boring.
Mm,
Like, or at least I felt boring compared to the way that other people have perceived me. And then I'm like, the reality is that I'm just really like, yeah, quite quiet, slow moving. I like to rest a lot. I like to be cozy. And even not
mm,
necessarily lazy. I just like to spend a lot of time alone, being
mm.
quiet, doing relaxing things.
I also kind of I often call myself boring as well, and I also kind of call myself like a more of a grandma spirit, and
Yeah, I'm
it's interesting.
for sure like a Abuelo spirit. Also, really quick, and I guess I should have said this before we started recording. I do use all pronouns. My preference is they, them. Just as we're talking about labels, I find myself to be a very fluid person, and it's funny because I think when I was younger and I first realized that there was a word and an identity for the way that I'd felt my entire life, I was like, oh, I wish I'd always had this language. And I think I felt
Mm,
more defensive of being like, oh, like, please use only these pronouns, blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know, just the older I get and the more comfortable I get with identity in general and like kind of not
mm,
being so worried about outside perception. I'm cognizant of how I come across other people and how I present and things like that. But it is, I don't know.
mm.
Yeah, when we're talking about that inner world and like who we are outside of labels, and when I don't have to think about labels or gender or race or any of, or like class or any of that, I feel just like a pretty simple person. I don't know. I think
Mhm.
maybe some people feel maybe a lot of people feel that way, but I think outside perspective, I seem like a really larger than life kind of
Mhm.
person. And none of that's fake by any means, but I think some people can be quite surprised, or I would even someone has literally people have literally told me they've been like, or they told friends of mine that they were disappointed by how I am in real life because I'm not like
Mm.
I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah.
very low key and quite quiet. And I think when people see how warm you are with other people, they take your quietness as like standoffishness. And I'm
Mm.
also attractive, so I think people just think I'm a bitch, which I can be a bitch, and
Mm.
I stand 10 toes down on being a bitch. I think it's healthy for you, but
For
it's within
sure.
reason. I don't like mean girl stuff, but I like being like, I'm very quite strict. I'm firm in my boundaries that I'm not for everyone and everyone is not for me. And I think a
Mm.
certain way when you're a woman or a femme and especially when you're brown and black. So there's a lot that could be said just based off of that and people's perception of you as like a black femme in the world, especially one that's like more social and public, either through creativity or work or whatever it is that you do. And then if you don't treat someone or a few people the same way that you treat like your closest inner circle, then they're like,
I love what you brought up there, and we'll also like dive a little bit deeper into that in the later half of the podcast. I'm
yeah,
also from New York City. I'm Black, and I also was really into like rock music and alternative culture, and I think that part of that is part of that conversation as well. I feel like it took me
yeah,
some time to kind of have like that New York City like fuck is you talking about spirit or whatever, but it did come out after some time. So I think that's also kind of part of like identity and kind of like coming to
yeah,
like who you are. So we'll dive up into that further.
I would
But
love to.
I would love to kind of talk about your name change, your artist name
Yeah.
change. In 2022, you moved from the Childlike Empress to La Sirén. So can you share a little bit about what that name signifies to you?
Yeah, absolutely. The change came about. I had wanted to change my name for a while because in many ways it felt like I was outgrowing the name the Childlike Empress. I mean, I literally chose that name for myself when I was like maybe like 12 years old because I loved the movie The Neverending Story and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that would be such a cool name. And then like I got like into high school and started listening to Childish Gambino and I was like, oh, like you can have like a cool like longer name and I was like, okay, like I don't know, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of had that like similar kind of ring to it. And it was a really really cool name, but I just felt in many ways I had outgrown it. Partially like the childlike part, which I maintain that we should keep a sense of childlike wonder with us as we get older, which is why I felt so attached to the name. But I do outside of music, I am a sex worker, so like, and I tie eroticism and a lot of like very adult things
Mm-hmm.
into all of my art, especially my photography. But like, I felt myself wanting to make whatever came next. Felt myself wanting to make more like sexual, sensual, like more adult kind
Mm-hmm.
of themes, and it didn't feel right having the name the Childlike Empress because I feel like in many ways that can pull in a younger audience and I'm not really interested in a younger audience. And also just like I don't know, it's a very gendered name too. And that was kind of added to like I chose my name I think around the age of 18, had realized that I was non-binary, and then I kept the name despite that because I put my album out. She turned 6 years old on my birthday last week, so I put the album out like years after it had all been written and I had been performing. And the name and then the album had been with me for a while at the point that it was out into the world and other people were finding it all over the world. And like by the time it was all out and everything was said and done, I was like, well, I feel really honestly quite disconnected from the name. Not so much the album. The album will always be a part of me, but also yes to that. And I'm sure we'll speak more on that moving through this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But the name was just like I just felt like I had outgrown it and I was like, I need like a new uh a new shell, like a snail moving to a bigger shell, like a hermit crab.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, Le Sirène is pulled from my Haitian side. My dad said I'm Haitian, so it's pulling from one of the lois from Haitian culture, and it was something that I had to think about because I'm like, well, I haven't been inducted into voodoo, and just because I'm Haitian, I don't claim like voodoo priestess like that. You got to work for
Mm-hmm.
that. You got to be invited into that. So that's nothing that I lightly. So it was something that I thought a lot about. I was like, okay, well, how can I call upon this entity without calling myself this entity? Because the Loa don't like that. Like they don't like feeling like people are like, oh, well, I am
Mm-hmm.
this. Like
Yeah.
it's like Venus or Aphrodite worship. Like, you don't say that you are that goddess because they find it offensive. I'm a
Mhm.
very superstitious, very witchy person,
Mhm.
obviously. So I believe in the powers, but I'm very careful and respectful in the way that I work with things beyond myself. So
Mm.
and then playing into like gender fluidity instead of calling myself La Sirène, which would be calling myself the deity, which I'm not. I also wanted to play with the gender of it because
Mm.
I could have called myself La Sirena, I could have called myself Sirena, like all that stuff, like with like the feminine A at the end. If I were to be
Mm.
pulling from like my Latina culture, um, but yeah, La Sirena just felt like one, it was unique because I was like doing my research and there was a few La Sirenas, there was a few sirens, there was a few, things like that. But I just wanted to call upon something that felt more aligned with myself as a bigger picture. Like it felt like the childlike empress was me as a teenager. And I
Mm.
was like, well, I want my name to be timeless and to grow with me. And like, I want to pick
Yeah.
something that I feel like I can have for the rest of my life, for the rest of my career, and feel like it
Mm.
identifies. And I'm a Scorpio. I'm a big water witchy, sexy, deep,
Mhm.
scary shadow kind of bitch.
I love that.
The
Yeah.
name felt good because I'm just like, yes, I do identify with signs. I do identify with
Mm.
having this very like pretty shell, like, oh, it's alluring. I'm drawing you in, like with my looks, with my
Mhm.
song. But then it's like when you get up close, I'm really quite like I wouldn't say that I'm like an ugly or an abrasive person, but like I think I'm just kind of like
Mm.
what am I trying to say? I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like a bit
I
tougher.
I think I
You
understand maybe
you
what
know,
what you mean because I
like
feel
it's
like
not
I also kind of navigate that space where I'm usually wearing a 3X t-shirt even, but I get like hyper sexualized in a way where
yeah.
sometimes I can kind of play with it, but to me it's very separate from who I am as a person. And I find that
Yeah.
like I'll even tell the person like, I want you to know right now, I know I look this
This
way, I
ain't
present this way, but I'm actually like this. Yeah.
yeah. And people will never actually fully understand. And then I think especially in the realms of like romantic relationships and people like lusting after you and pursuing you, like especially when I'm definitely like a very high femme presenting person, going back to identity. Like I'm cognizant of how I look, so I understand why everyone's gonna, she, her, me for the rest of my life, because that's fine unless I decide
Mhm.
to like change the way that I look, which I don't feel I like presenting femininity, but the minute you get close to me, it's like, oh, this energy it's a little
Mhm.
different. It's a little
Mhm.
gritty. And like,
Yeah.
I think that transcends labels and pronouns. I really do. So that's why I don't really I don't take it that seriously. Like, and I don't really I don't know what I'm trying. I think like just like you said, like I think when you're used to getting hypersexualized, there's almost a knee-jerk reaction to like kind of water down your femininity and your
Mm.
sexuality. Because I don't know, it's almost like I think through sex work and just through getting older and realizing the ways that everyone moves in the world and the ways that we're all conditioned, I almost feel like my femininity is a weapon.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I like kind of, I
Mhm.
brandish it like a knife, which is what I
Yeah.
think the name is for me, because it's just like, sexy
Mhm.
girl in the water, nothing wrong with
Mm.
that. And it's just like, come here, bitch, let me try you. It's like, don't be like the pretty exterior is kind of just like
Yeah.
almost a front to be able to get what I actually am trying to get across.
Mhm.
Across. If
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. There's a lot in there in that too, and yeah, I definitely have kind of weaponized my sexuality in a way, in
it's a
like
tool.
within the confines of the system. Like I'm going to have this awareness, I'm going to kind of like operate it in a different way. We'll come back to commitment. You guys are going to go on tour, so I definitely want to touch on your punk band. But since we're talking about take care of yourself, when I was listening to the record, I actually kind of found the name that you had at the time kind of spoke to it in a different way too, because it just seemed like you wrote that record at such a early age, but your perspectives on some of those things on like heartbreak was so mature. So it was like
Thank
a
you.
young person, but also it was almost like you were speaking from the wiseness of like an older woman who had like
Yeah.
experienced like a lot more at that time. So I'd love to know if you
Yeah.
could speak a bit to where you were when you were writing the record, because you just mentioned that you'd actually been working on that record for maybe a minute before you released it. In the span of that time period till now, what did it look like and how has that kind of ebbed in the years following?
I had written most, if not all of those songs, I think between the ages of like it was really I think I wrote that album mostly when I was 19. There was some stuff floating around from when I was like 17, 18, but until I wrote this album, and I didn't really sit down to say, "Oh, I'm writing an album." I had moved to Pittsburgh from New York City when I was 18. I
Mhm.
was incredibly heartbroken. Went through like it was technically my second relationship, but it was just like the easiest way to describe it is it felt like my life had turned into like like a Skins season. Like that's how
Mm,
chaotic my life was. And I don't know. I think that's reality for a lot of New York teenagers. It's like you grow up really fast.
yeah.
Because I grew up on Staten Island, I went to school in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And it was even post high school because I had made it to the end of high school and like just literally dropped out at the very end because I just, as we're here to talk about mental health, like my mental health was
Mhm.
like really, really awful for most of my life. And in high school, it definitely hit
Mm,
like a peak. And I think because I had been a really high achieving, like gifted student for my entire life, I think for all of the adults around me, it was just a matter of like, oh, you're just being lazy and you just want to like
mm,
smoke weed with your friends. And I was like, there's something obviously wrong. Like if I had a kid
mm,
and their personality like complete like it's just like a tale as old as time. I was like, how did
mhm,
anyways, I digress. I wrote the album like after I had left New York City. Kind of on a whim. I thought I was gonna come back, but then I went to Pittsburgh because my best friend from high school had moved out there, and I went to go stay with her in the midst of this like really, really chaotic, tumultuous relationship and therefore breakup. So the album very much just kind of poured out of me. I sat down to write a song. I wrote Take Care of Yourself. That was the first song that I had ever really fully written. Like Cataclysm is the opening song on the album, and it's like short and it's a cappella. That was my part of a song that I had written with my ex that a lot of the songs are primarily about. And I just felt so proud. That was the first thing that I had written where I was like, oh, that's like actually good. And it felt like such a
mm,
waste to have it just be on some like weird little song that we made on GarageBand together. And I was like, no, I'm taking this. Like this is mine. I wrote this. I'm proud of it. And I feel like it really lays the kind of setting because I wrote that song while we were in the relationship, but like when you look at the lyrics of that verse, it's really very sad and it kind of talks about like a
mm,
doomed relationship. Yeah, I wrote Take Care of Yourself, and then the song just kind of came from there. My friend gave me a banjo for my 19th birthday, and then that really just I just suddenly had about like 8 songs, and
mm,
played them a lot around Pittsburgh for a few years. So yeah, I wrote it when I was 19. The album didn't come out. How do I not know when my own album came out? So I'm gonna fact check myself. But it's been, I think it turned 6 years old. Yeah, because yeah, it came out in 2019.
mhm,
And to this day, I'm really proud of it. And I appreciate you saying that it sounds like it came from like an older, wiser person. I think I've always been
mhm,
that person that gets told, "Oh, you're so mature for your age. Oh, you look old. You
mm,
carry yourself as like an older person."
mm,
And I
yeah,
think a lot of us, especially women and femmes, especially Black and Latina women, Black and brown women and femmes, especially when you're in like a family of immigrants, like first or second generation. I'm second generation. I'm eldest daughter. I think you get adultified. At least I certainly did. But I noticed the same thing in so many of my friends and strangers on the internet talking about their experiences. Like I like to say that like as the eldest daughter, you're the secret third parent. Like so I think I
absolutely.
don't know. I think there was a lot of like the emotional world that I had always contained even as a child. And like as I get older, I don't really feel that different. Like sure, I go through
Mm,
changes, but I really kind of like honestly kind of feel like I've always been this person. Obviously, you get older, you learn things, you learn more about yourself, you hopefully become more honest over time, you hopefully become more I don't know, just self-aware and aware of the world and your place in it and how you carry yourself.
mhm,
But I think I've kind of that kind of the root of who I am and the truth of who I am, I think has not changed very much. So, I look at that
mm,
album and I think I sound like a teenager, but ultimately I'm still really proud of everything that I said on that album. Um,
mm,
in some ways I feel so far from it and like such a different person, but at the same time I'm like, no, I still
mm.
stand by everything by everything on that album.
You brought up like struggling with your mental health as a teen, and that's something that I struggled with. And at the time, it's like I was diagnosing myself. I was finding like I was very clear that something was wrong.
Yeah.
But at the time it was like, "Oh, you're a teenager and like you're
Like, you don't
good."
have anything to worry about.
Yeah, and so as you were talking, it's really interesting because I feel like it seems to like equate into a person that is like very empathetic and has like a very deep inner world, but like sometimes struggles with like understanding and stuff. Because when you were mentioning like I'm the same person in a lot of different ways than that I was when I was at that age, even though I also feel like completely different at the same time, it's like
Yeah.
when I was in high school, I was, like, really obsessed with Sylvia Plath, and, like, when you start, like, being in music industry and stuff like that, people are like, "Oh, we all have a Sylvia Plath era," or whatever, but it's like, "No, no, no, no," you know what I mean?
I'm
And
different.
so I had Yeah, yeah, no, 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 I was in the trenches, like, and I had this secret blog spot called The Fortified Bell Jar, and, like, this year I went back
Okay.
into it. Period. And I went I went back into it and it was a little less it was a little more cringy, but it was the same thing. It was like, there's a lot of suffering in the world. I don't understand. Where's the love? I don't get it. Like, what's
Yeah.
happening? And I have a lot of that perspective now. So what kind of struck me with Take Care of Yourself in particular was when you were saying to release the anger and to like basically not project or blame your mental health onto other people. I thought that that was such a like that's something that takes a lot of time and like life experience to sometimes get
Mm.
to. So, yeah, where do you think that that comes from?
It's funny because as you're saying it and you're bringing up that line specifically, it's a lot of my songs, even though, like, I'm kind of telling the story of me with other people and how other people have treated me, a lot of it is a meditation, like, talking to myself.
Mm,
Um, because I think it's funny because that song is kind of it's a paradox because in the second verse, uh in like the first couple of verses, I'm almost telling you what not to do because I'm like pack it all up
mhm,
inside, don't let anything out, let it fester, let it out as anger. Because I don't know, I grew up with two very deeply emotionally immature parents
mm,
that argued all the time. Like they did the whole stay together for the kids thing. So a lot of my childhood was just like screaming, like just people
mm,
just screaming at each other. And I'm like being a kid and being like, you're not actually having a discussion. Like you're not actually letting each other know how you feel. Like you're being like really scary to each other and like, and to your children. And so I did not have the tools. I did not grow up with the tools. No one gave me the tools. I think it was something that just felt like common sense to me and that like observing my parents, observing myself, observing my friends cuz like when I think of the second verse where it's like, "Don't blame other people for your mental health." That was kind of something I had to remind myself of because as obviously, yes, when you grow up in traumatic home situations, when you have traumatic friendships, relate romantic relationships, like people are gonna fuck you up as you get older, for sure. But I
mhm,
think for me, that was kind of like the third verse kind of is like a reminder that like at the end of the day, you are responsible for yourself. I could
mm,
sit here and bang my fist on my chest and tear my room apart and pull my hair out because of how disgusted and upset I am at the way that people failed me, specifically
mhm,
as a child.
mhm,
Because, yeah, that's always going to piss me off. That's going to always hurt my feelings that I was not taken care of and looked after in the way that I should have been by my caretakers, that I was treated horribly by a lot of my friends in my upbringing, and it gave me a lot of really bad trust issues. I could
mm,
sit here and be mad at those people and mad at myself for trusting them forever, but what is the point in that? Like, that's just how you live
mm,
a really bitter life. And I don't know, I think it was just kind of it was medicine for myself, but it was medicine because I don't know, I think of like friend falling outs that I had like, pre-high school and right after high school, and just like how the thing that I was running into with a lot of those friends was like them feeling like I was somehow responsible for their mental state. And obviously, we care about our friends, we care about our community. We should be able to help our friends work through things. And I have a better understanding of it when it needs to be a good friend the older that I get. Um, but I think just had kind of like, you're past that high school phase and you're realizing that some people are just high school friends, but some people might not be ready to admit that. So they're kind of clinging on to this version of you and this version of themselves, who they are with
Mm,
you. And I don't know, just kind of just for me was just like, it's okay to let things go. I am not someone that's shy about cutting things off and letting them go or
mm,
just letting things fall to a lull because it's not everything's about cut off culture. Like I'm quick to block a motherfucker, but that's a Scorpio in me, and I'm quick to hold a grudge. So I think for me, it's also like, hey, like if you want to move through life with a light heart,
mhm,
you cannot take it with you, and you have to find some
mm.
way to forgive yourself and forgive other people. I'm not saying forget. I'm a spiteful ass person.
Yeah,
If you did me wrong, that's with me forever, baby. That's with me
yeah,
forever. I'm not gonna
yeah,
sit here and stew on it every day, but I'm not a forgive and forget type of bitch. No,
yeah.
it's right here. It's right here. I don't carry it with me every
Mhm,
day. But
mhm,
if you have
mhm,
harmed me in any way, shape, or form, or someone that I love, or
mm.
you've treated me with like dismissal, disrespect, we're cool forever. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna go out of my
yeah.
way to harm you ever, but we're cool forever
Mm.
because you've shown me what I need to
I'm
know.
I'm I'm definitely like that too. And there's times where I try to like work on it a little bit, but there's also times where I've been told a lot by like my parents and stuff like that that like I'm too rigid and that I throw people away.
It's strict
Um
around here,
and
baby. It's
and tell you the truth though, like, if they wanted to, they would. Sometimes it's like, oh, there was other things happening, but for me, it's just like it comes back to if they wanted to, they would
If they
sometimes.
wanted to, they would. Sometimes, for sure. I think everything is in balance because I've learned the hard way that you can be too rigid and that you can
Mhm.
walk away from people too quickly, and people aren't disposable. But what I know of myself and why I don't think there's anything wrong with the way that I personally like handle my relationships and like the ways in which I'm strict with people,
Mhm.
I do not mince my fucking words. I do
Mm.
not leave room for interpretation. I leave room for connection and human mistakes and error and getting to know each other better. But I am extremely well spoken, especially when it's a matter of my relationship to you. And if you've got me
Mm.
fucked up, I wasn't good at that when I was a teenager. I was angry and suicidal. Of course, I wasn't good
Mhm.
at explaining to people that I couldn't be there for them because I couldn't
Mm.
be there for I wasn't there for anyone. I wanted to die every single day. And
Mhm.
that's like
Mhm.
very raw. And, sorry, trigger warning for anyone that, is currently dealing with any kind
No.
of suicidal ideation or suicidal
Mhm.
thoughts. But like, that was a reality of it. I felt like a shell of a human being for my entire childhood up until my teenage years. And this album was really a marking point of me being like, I need to be more honest with myself because I need to be more honest with other people because I don't want to live a life of self-deprecation. I don't want to live a life
Mm.
of people treating me like shit. And so I'm going to always try to do my best to make myself really clear with people.
Mm.
So then when I value my relationship with somebody and I want to be in their life and I want them to be in my life, if we hit a rough patch or they do something that pisses me off or I do something that pisses them off or there's hurt feelings floating around, I want to talk about it, and I know that I
Mhm.
am going to be completely honest and make it known what I need to move forward and to feel comfortable with that person and to feel respected
Mhm.
by that person moving forward. So if it happens again, then we're cool forever. Like
Mm. Mhm.
goodbye because I make myself really well known. So I think when people are being strict, it's just a matter of it's a difference between cutting somebody off for something that they never knew was a boundary because sometimes we don't know things are a boundary until we run into them head on.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things to learn as I get older and as like want to be in long-lasting friendships, romantic relationships,
Mm.
professional, whatever. You have to know how to have conflict and to be able to move past conflict because sometimes you have to have that hard conversation with people and then you
Mm.
both feel really uncomfortable because there is conflict. So then you're like really weird and walking on eggshells and you don't know how to move past it. Which is,
Mm.
like, the second part of conflict is, like, "Okay, now move on." Like, how do we let's
Yeah,
move forward then? Because I've tried to work through conflict with friends and, like, exes, and it's just like, "Oh, we kinda" it's just kinda it's kinda damaged past this point because neither of us know how to actually be comfortable with each other again. We're both a little bit too wounded by each other, so that's maybe a
for
good sign to,
sure.
like
I hear that. Let me ask you a question, and this is just
Mhm.
kind of something that I personally feel. I sometimes feel like my early experiences with mental health struggles have like really impacted my communication style,
Yeah.
and a lot of my identity. Because I also have the same perspective when there's conflict with people. Let's just talk about it and figure it
Just
out.
talk.
And what I
Yeah.
what I find though now a little bit now more than ever with like COVID and everything happening too. It's just like there's such a sometimes it's shocking to me, like, how afraid the discomfort how fearful people are of uncomfortability, like, difficult conversations with just, like, anything. So, I will try to facilitate those kinda discussions with somebody that I care about, but most of the time, I feel like I'm presented with people who aren't used to having hard conversations, but because I also was a very suicidal, depressed, high schooler or whatever. So if someone comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, I've been thinking about suicide," I'm not going to run for the hills. I think that your early experiences with mental health, like that is where maybe your communication style comes from to
Oh
some degree.
yeah, definitely, because I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel heard when I was making myself known. And I feel like I learned from a very early age, like almost like I feel like what was communicated to me as a child, because I had been feeling those feelings since I was a child, like a young child. I remember being very, like, I wasn't even 10.
Mm,
And I was thinking about, I don't want to be here. Why am I here?
yeah.
Very existential, which I think a lot of kids like have very existential questions all the time. But I think the
Mhm.
difference is, do they have adults around them that they can ask those things? And how does the adult either dispel fear, explain something to them in a realistic way that's not going to scare them? It's hard. I don't envy
Yeah.
parents. I don't envy adults, but it's interesting now being at an age where a lot of my friends do have kids and I get to be part of their kids' lives and they just say the wildest things and they'll ask really existential questions. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I had this stuff on my mind as a kid too. But no, I definitely think that my communication style as an adult, I am an over explainer, especially when it comes to myself. I think that has to do with neurodivergence as well. And I
Mm,
think a lot of Black women and femmes, um, I'm not saying that the majority of Black women and femmes are neurodivergent, but most of the people in my circle, baby, we're neurodivergent. And I really appreciate specifically the Black women and femmes in my life that are neurodivergent because I think we just have the best communication and we go like above and beyond to explain
mm,
ourselves and our feelings and to balance having respect for the other person's feelings.
yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not shy about conflict. There have been times where I've known that a bigger conversation needs to be had, but I didn't feel like I had the energy or the words, so I kind of let it sit in the ether for a little too long. And I almost lost one of my best friends because of shit like that, because they were going through big grief that I had
Mm,
no experience with. And I
yeah.
didn't know how to be there for them as a friend, and they had recently moved really far away.
Mm,
And this was all wrapped up in COVID. I think that I think one of those things as we get older that is gonna really hit all of us is grief and like literally
mhm,
losing people
mm,
like to death on passing on to other realms, but also just like the grief of like outgrowing friendships and stuff like that. So it was an interesting moment where I really had to look at myself where I was like, oh, like yeah, what kind of friend am I? Like what how good of a communicator am I actually? Because I think
mm,
I really, at that point, had really boasted myself on being like a really good communicator. But when it came down to it, I was avoiding a bigger conversation because I was not ready to be that vulnerable, which was so
mm,
odd because I don't really shy away from those things. And I think it was just like, it's hard to approach. And I think more often than not, I'm more willing to have a hard conversation and to have conflict. But I've definitely been in moments where I've avoided it, especially when
mhm,
it feels like a relationship might be on the line, where it feels
for
like, oh,
sure.
if we have this conversation, we might not make it out to the other side.
Mhm,
That's happened in friendships, but I'm definitely like, that happens to me a lot in romantic relationships. I don't really do short term I don't do short-term relationships because I stay in things because I like making things work with people, but I don't know, it's been nice to be in multiple long-term relationships now because I've learned about myself that I'll stay a little too long.
mm,
Because I think that conflict and like healthy conversations are like a reason to stay.
mm,
And sometimes I've learned that just by having like an in-depth conversation does not necessarily always mean that that person's gonna understand you any better.
yeah,
Like, I've had a lot of
absolutely.
really long, in-depth conversations with people just to realize that we still don't understand each other. So that's kind of
Mhm,
the hard part because,
mhm,
the saying communication is key, but not always. Like,
for sure.
that's not it. That's part of a formula of being in relationships with people. Because, like, you can
Yeah.
be a great communicator and you can still be selfish. You can still, like, not
Mhm,
actually listen to other people and stuff like that. So, I don't know.
mhm,
Yeah, I think communication and the way that I communicate is definitely from having difficult mental health throughout my life because I want the
Mm,
people around me, if I want to be close with people, I want them to understand me. And there's a lot going on in here. So
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
has their
I
own inner worlds. So yeah.
definitely, definitely. And I feel that like ironically, like, I always felt like I was stupid a little bit, like, I always kinda felt dumb, and they
I
kept
feel
putting me in,
you.
like, gifted classes and stuff, and I had a conversation with my mom one time, and she was like, "There was a month where you was on my ass every day about they made a mistake down at that office, and I'm not gonna tolerate it no more. They put you in the right class, and you need to get on." So, it's just like, now I'm 32, and I'm starting to realize that I am smart, right? But, like, so
Mm,
I have a very deep inner world where I'm in my head and I'm doing a lot of existential thinking and stuff like that. And sometimes too, like when you have that kind of predisposition, you can over intellectualize yourself and sometimes it becomes avoidance and sometimes it becomes like
yeah.
ego, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes like, regardless, like I'm gonna be a therapist and stuff like that. I'm still fighting for my life with my attachment styles, even though I have the information. It's almost like having the information is just more information just
Mhm.
swirling around a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, so I
Absolutely.
definitely love that. So I definitely want to switch gears over to commitment, because you're
Mhm.
about to hit the road soon. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So
Yeah.
kind of share a little bit about the bands. I saw that you had posted saying that like you always wanted to be in a touring band, and to me that's interesting, because you know what that life is like. And you want it. So talk to me about how the band came together.
That's a really funny I'm excited to get to the tour part of it because I have a lot to say about that. But,
Mhm, mhm.
so the band came together so easily. So I moved to Philly, um, last April. And April was like April to July. July is when I actually got my apartment. And I was like, oh, like I'm actually here now because April to July, maybe struggle. I knew that I was supposed to be here and I moved here. It's in my life, I go through things in cycles. Like I'm a full believer in like universe and universal lessons and what people call God, all that stuff, because things really do happen in cycles, and I like to call them progress reports in my life because I think I have lived through the same situation multiple times, and it's a progress report because it's like, okay, well, how are you doing this time? How are you handling this person, this lesson, this time in this phase of life now that you're older? So I went through a bad breakup and I moved again because I was just like, it's
Mm,
like, I don't know, it's hard when you build a home around another person. And so much of our friend group was intertwined. Even before we had met, like it just felt like I could not stay in Pittsburgh and not still have my life be informed by that person who I just absolutely wanted to get away from. I made that move for me. And the breakup was obviously a part of it, and getting away from that person and not wanting to see his fucking face was part of it, and not having to share the same friend group and be in all the same places because Pittsburgh is big town, small city through
mm,
and through. You cannot escape people in that
yeah.
city. So I was just like, "Oh, I'm not staying in the city and dealing with like being in your fucking face."
Mhm,
It
mhm,
was too much. But I was also just like, okay, I didn't think I was going to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 9 years of my life. That was never a plan. I just had a really comfortable, beautiful, very cozy, wozy kind of life there. But
mm,
even before the breakup, I realized I was stagnant. I was like, I'm not inspired. I'm not making new music. I feel like this could just be my life forever. And in a way that I wasn't mad at it. I was like, I could just live in a beautiful house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with this guy that I love, but I don't really trust. And every 3, 6 months, there's some big issue that we're going through and almost breaking
mm,
up. So I was just like, the cycle needs to be broken. There was a big kind of ancestral download where I was like, okay, I actually need to get out of here fully. And so Philly was the next best choice. I already had a lot of people out here. So Pierce, that is my drummer, and Commitment is the vocalist of Soul Glow. I've known Soul Glow
mm,
for years. I actually met Soul Glow. I had opened for them playing as the Childlike Empress. It's funny because we were literally just talking about that at band practice last night because I was always kind of that person that played really soft, like singer songwriter indie feeling music and like would get thrown on hardcore shows just because people were just like, I think even before I was making hardcore music, people just kind of lumped me in
mm,
with that kind of group, which I thought was funny. I like it. I like a mixed genre show for sure. But it was funny because I'm, sitting there playing like my soft music, knowing damn well that I would honestly rather be making angry music because I'm a very angry person. And so, like I said, I lived in Pittsburgh for 9 years. For pretty much all of those 9 years, I would like try to get like a group of people together that so like we can make like fast, loud, angry music. And
Mm.
I have well-meaning friends that wanted to do it with me and we would get together and practice sometimes, but I knew that the kind of music that I wanted to be the front person for I don't have the knowledge of how to make that music. I love hardcore and I
Mm.
love punk music, but I've not spent my whole life indoctrinated into it. Like I found
Okay.
punk and hardcore through emo and through pop punk. Like I come from like the
Mm.
softer side of that music, the very emotional, kind of whiny side of that music. And then,
Yeah.
as I've gotten older, and once I was like an older teenager, I started getting more into like the punk and the New York hardcore scene. But then I moved and Pittsburgh has not so much of a hardcore scene. Pittsburgh has a really cool music scene, but it's a lot of rap, it's a lot of R&B, it's a lot of indie, it's a lot of indie. It's mostly indie, I would say. It's a lot of country and Americana, and there's like punk and metal, and there's some hardcore bands, but there's really not many. So there just
Mm.
wasn't much of an opportunity for me to be in that kind of band out there. And I think the people that could have made that music with me looked at me and did not take me seriously. I don't know if it's because of how I look, I don't know if it's because of race, I don't know if it's because
Mm.
I don't have a penis. I don't know if it's because of the music that I already made. They were like, well, you make music like that, so why would I think that you could be a good hardcore front person? So it has been very delightful and funny and quite spiteful for me to have moved here. And then, I'm not even here for a year, and I met my guitarist Jake, who is the person who started the band. Him and Pierce had been talking for a while, and Jake's been in so many just like really sick punk, hardcore, metal, all these different types of bands throughout his entire life. Like everyone that I'm in this band with has been in some sort of punk or hardcore band for like a long, long, long time.
Mm.
And they've been touring musicians for a long, long, long times. And Jake and Pierce had been talking about starting a band for a while because Pierce is really multi-talented. Everyone sees him as the front person, but that boy plays bass, that boy plays guitar, that boy plays drums like a motherfucker. Like he's crazy. He's one of the most talented people I've ever met. And so I think he was really longing for not being in the limelight and just getting to flex his other, instrumental skills. And then Jake approached me one day at the bar that he was working at. I went to go see McGee with my friend, but he canceled that Philly show. So then I was like, oh, let's just go like hang out at this bar that a bunch of my friends work at. So we went to the bar and we were about to leave, and Jake was like, wait, 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 please give me like 5 minutes. Like, let me do something, but I need to ask you something really important. And he was like, Pierce and I are trying to get this band going, and I personally want a newcomer. Like, I don't want just like the
Mm.
same old fucking dudes on the mic. He's like, I don't want anyone that I already know can do the thing. He's like, I want you to be our front person. Like, I want to try it out because he was there. Soul Glow and Mannequin Pussy did this whole big sold out tour around the country, and it was really cool because it's two Philly bands and they
Mhm.
had these incredible run of sold out shows when they got back. And Sogo has a song Gold Chain Punk, and at the end of it there's a part that Gigi usually screams, and they like all kind of switch instruments, and it's like this whole kind of cool thing to watch happen. But like they'll invite people on to do like that part with Gigi or like instead of Gigi. So I jumped on for that part on like a few of the shows, and like I think Jake was at the last night, and he was like, it was that moment. He's like, if I didn't know that, if I hadn't seen you in that moment, I don't think I would have thought to pick you. But he's like,
Mm.
I saw that 30 seconds of you screaming on a stage at a sold out show, like you'd been doing this your
Mm.
entire life. So I want to see how this goes with you. And it's just been so fucking cool. It's just been so cool
Mm.
because like Jake and our bassist Zach, who Jake and Zach literally grew up together. They lived in Florida. They moved to Philly together. They've been in so many bands together. They are just absolutely diabolical shredders. Like
Mhm.
never in my life could I have had this band without them. It was really right place, right time. Like my whole move to Philly has I literally just feel like my ancestors are smiling down upon me because I listened to them at a really crucial moment. Commitment
Mm.
is the thing where I'm like, this is the proof that I had to come here. I love those boys. They're disgustingly talented. And I know
Mm.
I bring a lot to the table. I know that it really could also only be me to be in this band. And there's really nothing better than having like older jaded punk hardcore dudes just get like really sentimental and emotional with me. I wouldn't be in a band with
Mhm.
them if they weren't like that because I don't do the machismo shit.
Mm.
But it will always really just kind of tickle me to have like my very like, I don't know, well-seasoned, very jaded music friends be like,
Mhm.
"It could only be you."
You kind of like glow up a little bit. Like I could tell that you really
Yeah.
love this band and that this is really like
Yeah.
very very important to you and you're putting your all to it. So has that kind of changed like your relationship to hardcore or punk? Like are you getting deeper into that now?
Yeah, I think so, and I would say, like, so, like, emo and screamo and, like, pop punk was my introduction to rock music in general, but then as I
Mhm.
got older, and like I said, like, towards, like, the end of me living in New York City, I got more into the hardcore scene there, like, a friend had put me on to Show Me the Body right when they had put out, like, the Yellow Kidney EP, so that was, like, pretty much at the beginning of them getting a lot of recognition. So,
Mhm.
like, we would go to those shows, and I was 17, and I was going to those shows and fucking, like, spraining my rib. Like, I was, like, like, I would, like, the scrappiness of heavier music has always really spoken to
Mm.
me because I
Okay.
am someone that really values rage. Like, I really value
Mm.
anger, and I
Mhm.
value
Mhm.
letting people know when you're fucking angry. I don't mean going out of your way to be violent,
Mhm.
going out of your way to
Mhm.
take shit out on other people. But I think rage and anger have a place, and I will forever love punk and hardcore
Mm.
for being a space to get that shit out. And I would go to hardcore shows, I would go to punk shows, from like age 17 till now and feel like happy to be there. But if someone was putting on a really good performance, especially the front man, I would have such a deep feeling of envy of just like,
Mm.
oh, I bet that feels so good. Oh, I bet that feels so good to scream like that, to writhe around like that. And there's so many different ways to be like a hardcore vocalist because some people, they'll just sit there, stand there, and they're giving a really good vocal performance. And you got to be a really powerful presence to make the stand
Mhm.
there work. Because I love the scrappy boys that are they're shirtless. And I keep saying boys like it's still a boys game. It's really not. It's honestly quite dominated by all different. It's very dominated by all different people now. But I love the motherfuckers that are like really athletic. Like I love a classic buff, high stamina, hardcore boy that's just
Mhm.
running around going crazy because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, it must feel so good. I come from like such a whiny emo screamo background, and then like I feel like everyone around me is they're so knowledgeable about other like really obscure hardcore and punk bands, and I'm just like, like I don't know any of these bands, and I have so much love and respect for it, but I almost think I have the upper hand to
Mm.
be a really good hardcore vocalist because I'm not drawing from the same pool that everyone else is.
For sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think that when I'm writing indie music too, I'm not just sitting there referencing other indie music. Like I'm thinking about all the different music that I love and that I've always loved. And so I have so much love and respect for hardcore, but I also think it becomes a costume and becomes like a clique. And I'm
Mhm.
really not interested in that at all because I really just like I don't belong to any one group. So I'm not really too interested in the politics of the hardcore and the punk and music scene because I think
Mhm.
that shit is very goofy more
Yeah.
often than not. And it's a lot of people just fucking circle jerking and all this stuff. And I ain't got the time for it because
Mhm.
people that I even admire, I have felt very pushed out by. And instead of having a chip on my shoulder and like moving out of spite for all of that, I'm just like, I'm just gonna make good music and have fun with people that value me in this part of music. So
Mm.
that's
Yeah, I
it.
I I I love hardcore and I love metal. I love just heavy music in general. I like how there's people talk about rage and pain in other genres of music, but like it's only hardcore where it's like I'm not like you, you suck, and I never want to see you again on my block ever again, fucker, or whatever.
The
Like
beef is deeper than rap
yeah,
beef.
and
It's like
sometimes
it's
it's
on
just like
site forever.
I need that. I need that. So I'm glad to
Absolutely.
hear that, and I'm glad that you're making your own pathway, and um not like you do it because of that reason, but like moving the way you do is very inspiring to young people, and I wish that I had like someone like you to like look up to when I was a younger person. You're about
Yeah.
to head out on tour,
Yeah.
so what are you most looking forward to for this tour in particular, or like what is your relationship with touring since you do like
Yeah.
it?
I'm excited to spend more time with my band on this one. So the first tour that we went on, my first tour ever. These motherfuckers have been touring for so much of their lives at this point. But that was my first tour because I didn't get to tour with Take Care of Yourself because COVID happened.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that didn't really get to have like a social life. I like to call, like, that
Mhm.
album didn't get to have a social life because by the time it was out and more people were hearing it and wanted me to play concerts, I was kind of overplaying those songs. And
Yeah.
I hope she gets. I hope I hope that album
Mhm.
gets its day in the light. Like I would honestly love to tour with that at some point if there's interest once I
Mm.
have more material. But so the first tour, my boyfriend and I took his car and drove separately, and the guys were in the van with the gear. So I didn't get to spend that much time
Okay.
with them. So I feel like I didn't get that true like
Mhm.
camaraderie of the tour. And I'm like I said at the beginning of this, I'm really a very shy and introverted person. So I get really anxious before we perform. Not really nervous because I've been performing for so long, but it's almost like I just kind of have to go inward right before we perform, and my stomach always hurts before I'm just such an anxious. My stomach hurts all the fucking
Mhm.
time. My stomach hurts right now. Um, and then after the set, it takes so much out of me that I'm like, I don't want to talk to anyone. But I
Mhm.
also want to be someone that like. I don't want to come off as so self-important where it's a matter of like, oh, I don't want to talk to the people that just really enjoyed our set. I'm like, I need a fucking minute.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sweaty. Our
Mhm.
August tour was I was hot. I felt so gross. Like I'm extremely sensitive to like my physical. So
Mm.
if I'm too hot, if I'm too hungry, if my stomach hurts, like I'm the mood, the mental,
Mhm.
like it's
Mhm.
not working. But I'm looking forward to I think yeah, having kind of more of like a full tour experience. I also, like you said, I do photography and I have this camcorder that a friend gave me some as as we're playing shows, I'm also like, we'll get done with our set and then I'm, right there taking pictures. So it's a really dual, it's like a
Mhm.
multi-purpose kind of thing for me. So I'm looking
Mm.
forward to taking videos and pictures of the boys, spending more time with them because I do feel that we're very close, but they've all known each other much longer. So I'm excited to get to know them better.
Mhm.
My boyfriend is also an amazing photographer, so he'll be there with us, partially as our driver, partially as our documenter.
Mhm.
Um, I love the friendship of it all. I really do. It's harder than I thought. I definitely glamorized it growing up, watching like My Chemical Romance tour documentaries.
Yeah.
Like I romanticized the
Yeah.
fuck out of it because we went on that first tour and I was just like, oh, we slept for 2 hours and now we have to all drive like 6 hours. Like, you
Mhm.
know, it's a lot, and I am a very, like, at home, like I said, cozy wozy kind of person.
Yeah.
I like to be at home with my cats, with
Same.
my books, with my things, with my tea, and so being on the road it's a lot of, like it's not even so much that we're, like, party, party, party all the time,
Mhm.
but that's part of it, but it's hard to balance, like, I am having, like, a fun rock star time, and, like, I'm taking
Yeah.
care of myself.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
um, because on the first tour, I lost my voice by the end of it. And like our last show
Mm.
was in Pittsburgh, and I wanted to have a
Mhm.
really strong set to kind of be like, "Fuck you, see this is what
Yeah.
you're all missing out on, yeah,
Mhm.
Philly baby." I was like croaking my way through the set.
Oh,
People
yeah.
said it was still good, but I'm
Mhm.
of course my most harsh critic, so I was just like, I sound like
Mhm.
shit. Stop. Don't
Mm.
boast. I hate a false compliment.
Right, right, right.
But I'm really looking forward to just hanging out with everyone more, and I'm interested to see how I handle it the second time around, and how I'm able to kind of better bolster myself, I suppose. Now that I've kind of been through one tour.
I was gonna say I'll come through to the New York City show.
Yes,
We'll
please.
keep it East Coast strong. But thank you
Yes, I
so
would love
much.
that.
I've loved your perspective. I knew that you would offer a lot of great insights on theme with this podcast, and you did.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you? Both you and your projects.
Yeah, so I have too many Instagrams. But my main one is Le Sirén, LE period SIREN. And then through there you can find commitment, you can find my photo page. Yeah, and then commitment is commitment.phl on Instagram. And then I have a YouTube with a bunch of music videos from this year and some live stuff as well. And I've been filming a lot more with my camcorder, so I think I'm gonna start doing more just kind of like I don't think I'm gonna try to be a YouTuber by any means, but I love
Mhm.
documenting my life. So I think just like little just like vlogs, right? Kind of just like nondescript vlogs.
Mhm.
Because I love video format and I love long format media. So might start making more videos for my YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
dope. I mean, when I was on your YouTube just to kind of like, see what's on there. I like that you
Mm-hmm.
have like the first thing is a Chelsea Wolf cover from like 11 years ago. You know what
That
I
yeah,
mean?
I'm literally 16 in like an ex-best friend's room, and like I think that's still one of my most viewed videos, which is really funny to me because like I look at it, I'm
Hmm.
like, this is kind of cringy, but I'm also like, I've always been that bad.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, the Chelsea
I've
Wolf. Yeah.
come on
Come
now.
on, Flatlands. Yeah, period. All right. Well, I love this conversation. Thank you
Yeah,
so
me
much.
too.
All
Thank you
right.
for
I'll let
having
you
me. Good
go.
luck and congratulations on the relaunch. I'm really excited to hear
Thank
all the other
you. Yeah, me
episodes.
too.